Cool, cool, cool. So this next topic, man, is something I've always kind of me and my homies have this conversation in the background of who would you rather be as an artist, like long term, right? So I'm gonna give you artist A, artist B, and y'all just let me know, I thought this would be a fun topic to have. So artist A, right? They have about one or two classics in their arsenal, stamped. Nobody denies it. They have about a 3 to 4 year dominant run. Let's think Murder Inc. back in the day, or let's think Rockefeller, maybe Rough Riders, Master P. They have a little increment of a run like that. However, they've experienced they had that run, but it was a steep decline, fall off. They tried to come back. This artist, you're the artist that tries to come back, but it doesn't not necessarily pop for you. So that's artist A, right? Or would you rather be artist B? No real consensus classic. You have very dope albums, but you made a career out of being in the rap space and making solid bodies of work. Your peers respect you, but you never really dominated the scene. You just kind of kept afloat. So in your career specifically, or just in general, what who would you guys want to be? What kind of run would you want to have?
I'd like to see Bartle's perspective, him being a unique type of artist compared to myself.
Okay.
For me, I'm definitely going with artist B. I believe in consistency a lot more than that. I mean, I'm not going to mention any artists by names on the other side of on the other side of things. But if we look at consistency, I look at someone like Common, for example. Some would argue that he's got some classics in there, like Water for Chocolate, B. But I wouldn't. I think in the overall scheme of hip hop, I don't think there's a consensus classic for Common. But if you look at Common's career, he's been so consistent throughout it that that consistency is now carried out into other ventures. He's been in acting, he's done, TV shows. He's done so many different kind of things where he isn't just about hip hop anymore. People recognize Common just by looking at him, even if you never listen to his music. Whereas on the flip side, I look at certain artists that maybe were that flash in the pan that had that classic. Sometimes people let it get to their head, and that maybe contributes to the downfall. I don't know, but I just think that kind of having that consistent body of work and a consistent kind of lineage of music to show for it in the long run of things, I think it actually leads to better opportunities. You might not have a classic, but your life might be more fruitful. You might actually have more fans by not having that classic album. And at the end of the day, the critical reception is nice, but like I said, really, if you want to make music your career, you got to rely on the consistency, right? And putting out solid bodies of work and stuff, and not being too focused about what people think. So that's kind of the way I look at it. I'm artist B. Another guy I want to give a shout out to. He's a huge artist, so he doesn't need a shout out, but that he gives me a lot of influence is Alchemist. I think Alchemist is a great example of that. Like, he has been so consistent for 2 decades now, 3 decades, and he's arguably doing the best he's ever done. Catering to his niche fan base with his individual projects, and then he's also working with people like Anderson .Paak, Beyonce, like he's all these other artists, Eminem, like big people. But then he's got albums out with Mike G, Boldy James. Like, that's kind of the person that I look up to, and the type of artist that I want to be is somewhere that's I'm in all genres, I'm everywhere, and consistent hard work is what I believe in.
For sure. Black, what about you?
To kind of piggyback off that, because I'm definitely in alignment with that, because while it would be good, it'd be great if you had your period of time that you dominated in. And of course, over time, and even till this day, that's still going to be talked about, but it's going to be talked about in a nostalgic way. They're going to be talking about what you used to be, and they're going to be like, yo, you remember that time when this nigga was hot? Or you remember that time where that nigga was that nigga? But it's like, now that nigga's not that nigga no more. Versus you have a person like artist B, and Bardo really touched on a lot of those points so greatly that there's not much I can add to that. But I'm gonna put it in this type of perspective, right? You have an artist like that. If you take the climate that we're in currently, where more people are now on a very independent wave, you have this very you have a lot of niche subgenres of this underground shit that's really popping, to where an artist like Artist B can now have that opportunity to get a resurgence and become Artist A without having to have that decline. A great example is you have people like Rock Marciano in his resurgence. You have Griselda in their resurgence. You have Ransom in his resurgence. You understand what I'm saying? People like that, to where they've had that consistency of in had established themselves already as niche artists, to where they might not have the mass appeal like, other bigger names and whatnot, but they're still to this day talked about. And you look at them now, they really are the ones that's at the top of the leaderboard of this shit right now. The Rock Marcies, the Ransoms, the Griseldas, and shit like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. And as much as, I would like to say artist B, you know what I mean? I just think so much can come out of artist A too. You know what I mean? Just because I would say probably somebody like DMX, you know what I mean, would be the example to where like
Or
he killed
Amber.
he killed for that timeline, but like that he lived forever in terms of, and this is before he passed, like even though he put out some subpar music, after that 2 album run, like that run was undeniable. You'll take 50 Cent, like his run, albeit like when you really look back at it, it was kind of short. You know what I mean? Because it was the mixtapes where he was on fire, and then you said had the one classic album, and then the second album was a dope follow up, and then after that it was kind of like he kind of tailored off, not necessarily dropping duds, but so I personally think that a lot of the artists A's, and I'm mentioning like the 50s and Snoops and people like that, like you could still sustain the career and branch off to do different things, when we were like talking about the brand awareness thing. So, you know, I'd rather hit my lick quick, you know what I'm saying, and have that dominant run and then just kind of get off into other ventures, because I truly think that unless you really, really want to be doing it for a long period of time on the front end of it, as far as just being the rapper and the person, then having like a strong run in the beginning and then tailoring off and doing other things might be more suited for you. Because a lot of dudes, I could tell you right now, and I'll probably name a few because one comes to mind. He just dropped a dope album like last year, and then dropped something trying to keep up with the times this year. And that's Busta Rhymes, right? And I was just highly disappointed in that. You know what I'm saying? But my thing about that is like he probably falls more so in artist B in this example, because he has a lot of consistency. I'm not sure if Busta has a classic, in my opinion, like a overall consensus. I think he just has a lot of
I
strong
put the
albums.
come in. I put the come in there, but that's fair.
Yeah, yeah. You could. I would probably. I can't think of the album off the top of my head, but I think one of my favorite from him is When Disaster Strikes. But
Oh yeah,
um,
So,
my point is like, you have that type of thing going on later in their careers, to where it's like, man, it's not even worth it. I'd rather just get 5 years of you being the hottest guy. That way I can always go back to that nostalgia that BLAQ said, and I can always remember him at this height, him or her at this height. But I don't sometimes, as artists progress and get a little bit older, they fall off. There's not a whole lot of Nas 6 album runs happening nowadays with the guys that continue to rap. So give me the quick hitter, flash in the pan,
uh,
you're a dominant artist, and then after that, go
well, one
on and
thing I
do.
do want to kind of say though, to build on your point, because it's interesting to hear that perspective. I think though some of the artists you name where the difference is, like I'll use 50 Cent and Cameron as example. The
Yeah,
reason why those guys, in my opinion, though, were successful after that is because of their business mind. They have a different mind than a lot of artists where they were able to expand outside of music. I actually think it's unfortunate. If you look at the majority of artists that have a classic, they don't have that same success after. I'm going to
same
pick on
subject.
one guy in particular. I'm a massive Wu-Tang fan, so I mean no disrespect when I say this, but I'm going to bring up GZA. Liquid Swords is an undeniable classic in hip hop. I don't think there's anyone that's going to dispute that or argue that with me, from the production to his rhymes to the features to the album cover, every aspect of the music
Cats are
videos.
still freestyling off of those beats just to
E-
get off
exactly.
to this
Like,
day.
I have no issues admitting I used to copy the structure of RZA's beats from that album when I first started making my beats. I wanted to make Liquid Swords so badly. But unfortunately, I don't think that RZA or Jizza, you know, after that album had the same level of success as the other artists in either business or in music, you know. And that is the unfortunate kind of thing that I do see a lot of artists fall under. And that's more so where my reasoning for Artist B came from, is that, you know, is that fear of that, you know, you put out one classic that's just so good that you never put out music that's like that again. It never lives up to that. And then unfortunately, like, you just kind of tailor out. And if you don't have that business mindset to expand into, you know, movies or fashion or vitamin water, whatever it may be, then it is a little bit tougher, you know. But I also do think, too, one thing I want to point out is I think the landscape's very different today, you know. It was much harder back in 95, even 2005, being able to sustain this kind of indie fan base and this niche fan base. You know, in 2023, to touch on what we talked about earlier, you can tap in a fan base and almost make more money off of like a smaller handful of people today just by selling them vinyl and hoodies and CDs than you could 20 years ago having a label deal, you know. So it is a bit of a different landscape, but if we just look at it for what the question is, yeah, I'm still going with B. But yeah, it's interesting to hear all these different perspectives and things to think about, you know, because it's a really multifaceted question, I think.
Yeah, it's benefits to both. Don't get me wrong. Like, two of my favorite rappers, who one has classic mixtapes, one maybe have a classic album as a group member. I'll say in particular are Jadakiss and Fabulous. Like, those are two of my favorite guys. And they'd be in my personal top 10 if I had to give a list, right? But I know Fab doesn't have a classic album, but he has classic songs. He has a classic mixtape. The soul tapes, if you whichever one you want to pick, I'd probably say one of the first two. But people will say that for the most part, that listen to that tape. And then Kiss, like, he's an amazing lyricist, but he doesn't necessarily have a classic album. But he stood the test of time. You know what I'm saying? And him again, you know, right now he's selling coffee with his pops. You see what I'm saying? Like, he probably has a lot of other juice bars with Styles P, partnering with Styles P. So he has a lot of different things going on. And this is long before he made those things public. You know what I mean? So, but those are examples to where, like, they're super consistent. They've experienced, like, being amongst the big dogs on those songs, but not necessarily having a classic. So, like, they're probably, like, you know, B plus. You know what I mean, when you talk about the artists you're talking about. So yeah, like I said, man, it's interesting, and I just want to throw a monkey wrench in there and choose artist A, because again, like I said, man, like you said, with the artists having good business acumen, I'm probably one of those that would, if I hit a lick, I would know what to do with it after that. You know what I mean? And utilize
100%.
that run in a productive way, man. So
I'm trying to tell them, Hunt, I've been different.
Yo, Green, we got one, homie.
Greenery.
Time to take the cloak off, family is the bad guy. Woke up aggravated on my bad side. Separate me from them, I am the franchise. Close circle, damn right, I am anti. Coming back for what's owed to me, been an OG, nigga, never was a crash dummy. Cash flow